Hello, good afternoon and welcome back to the Analyst Vajiram and Ravi. So today is 14th of December and what are the important articles? Let's have a look. So the first topic is the most important highlight from yesterday which has been covered by most of the newspapers in today's analysis. And this is, and rightfully so, because this is the parliamentary security breach that we will be doing an in-depth analysis of. Second, we will do the analysis of road accidents in India because a WHO report has recently highlighted grave concerns regarding the same. Then we will do COP28 landmark deal reading. Why? Because this is the most important highlight coming from the COP28 of Dubai. The reason is that the global stock take has finally been adopted across the world. And then from prelims point of view, we will read about New Delhi Declaration on Artificial Intelligence, and we will also read about the fiscal responsibility and budgetary management and what are the different aspects of fiscal discipline and financial support that are given to states and what is the news regarding it. So let's get started. So the first article, very important article. This is the case of parliamentary security breach where two people have intruded into the chambers of the parliament. So what happened yesterday? So two people who were bystanders in the public gallery of the parliament, they jumped into the chamber where the MPs were sitting, and there they opened the canisters that emitted yellow gas. This naturally created a havoc in the parliament. Thankfully, all the parliamentarians have been evicted safely out of this, and these two invaders have been arrested. So this is the context that we will be building in this discussion. Now, this parliamentary security breach, interestingly, is also happening on the very same day when 22 years ago, the terrorist attack, the first ever terrorist attack happened on the sanctum of parliament, on the temple of democracy. So on the very same day, that is 13th December, we are again seeing an intrusion attack on the parliament. Now, this is very important, though this is little unconventional from UPSC point of view, but being the generally aware citizen of India, responsible citizen, responsible UPSC aspirant, you must ask yourself the following question. First of all, can about anyone enter the Parliament of India? And second, if one has to enter the parliament, then what are the rules and procedures he has to follow? Who allows his entry? And the second thing, what are the layers of security that the person has to pass through? And what are the security agencies responsible for the protection of parliament in India? So in order to make you answer all these questions, I am bringing up this following analysis. The first question is who can enter the parliament? So except for the MPs, the other people who in the parliamentary parlance are known as strangers or what we know as the visitors, they can enter into the parliament, and their entry, their admission, withdrawal and removal is governed by rules of procedures that are created by the particular house. So there will be a separate rule of procedure for Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. In this particular case, because Lok Sabha has been intruded, so here Rule 386, which determines the rules of procedure and conduct of business in the Lok Sabha, is governing the visitor's admission, their withdrawal or their removal from the house. Who regulates the entry of a visitor, or whether a visitor is living over there or he needs to be withdrawn or he needs to be removed from there, that is regulated by the speaker and only speaker. Under Rule 387 of the Rules and Procedures and Conduct of Business of Lok Sabha, he has the power to withdraw the strangers from any part of the house if he feels the need to do so, if he deems that it is correct to do so. Then what is the entry process? Who can enter or who can be a visitor in the parliament? Whoever wants to be a visitor has to be a keen or has to be known by the MP, who has to be recommended by a member of parliament. So it is only the member of parliament who can apply for a pass to be issued to the visitor and not anybody else, and therefore it is the ultimate responsibility of the member of parliament to ensure the security and sanctity of the house. In this particular case, MP Pratap Simha was responsible for issuing passes to these two intruders. So please remember, it is only under the power of a member to allow any visitor to come inside the parliament and attend its proceedings. Now, only that person who's very well known to the MP and the one who's personally known by the MP is only allowed, because MP has to give a declaration written in hand, which is, I know the visitor personally and I am responsible for them. They are my relative or personal friend. So only such people will be able to become a visitor in the parliament and not anybody else. They also need to provide and they are mandated to provide a certificate by signing this particular text. So this is how Parliament ensures that this is complete responsibility of the MPs to protect the security, ensure the security and sovereignty of the Parliament. Now, whoever is coming inside must also ensure that he carries certain identification certificate or photo ID card with him. So that is also a mandatory provision. Now, the persons who have intruded have actually followed all these laws. Coming to the next part, what are the other sides of the rules? For how much duration can a visitor be in the Parliament? The answer is, first of all, the duration is typically fixed, that is of 1 hour, but it can be extended more, depending upon the permission that is granted to the MP, not to the visitor. It has got nothing to do with the visitor, but the MP. So the MP will be issued one card. That card he will be giving to the visitors that he is allowed to bring into the Parliament. Where is he bringing these people? There are two types of galleries. There is a public gallery and there is a speaker's gallery. Now, speaker or the member of Parliament is allowed or entitled for bringing about 4 people, maximum of 4 people at one day during one time in the public gallery. And it was this public gallery only where these intruders were sitting. And in the speaker's gallery, he is entitled to bring not more than 2 people. So this is where the visitors or the strangers in the parliamentary parlance, they sit. Okay. Now, as I've already told you, only one card is issued, and that too issued to the member of Parliament. But in certain exceptional cases, it is often issued in 2 in number. So often 2 cards can also be issued. The nature of the card is that it is non-transferable. Suppose you and I have went to the Parliament and we felt that this was a good place. A family member should also be coming. I went to my mom, gave her this card. This is not possible because the right of this card is completely non-transferable. It is only given to a particular member of Parliament one at a time. So this is non-transferable, and only the person who is fulfilling the conditions, the security conditions, only that person will be allowed to enter inside the Parliament. Then there is also a provision which allows member to apply for a visitor card on the same day in the emergency cases, in case it is not possible for him to apply before the deadline. So some emergency cases are also allowed. Now, where do they sit? I've already told you. There are 2 types of galleries, public gallery and speaker gallery. And all of the frisking, before you come to this gallery, triple layer frisking will be done, and this will be performed by the Parliament Security Staff, the PSS. This is the main nodal agency which is responsible for ensuring and monitoring the security in the Parliament. Now, what are the different layers of parliamentary security? Before you enter into the chamber of the house, before you enter into the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, you have to go across 3 layers of security. As you can see, the first layer, this particular layer. Now this particular layer, as you can see here, visitors cannot take anything inside. This is the first level of frisking that is again done by the Parliamentary Security Staff. And here is where you are only able to carry your ID and visitors pass. They are here frisked using metal detectors, etc. And the second layer of frisking happens around 200 to 250 steps away from the main house, from the main chambers. Visitors are again frisked for the second time over here, and here they are not allowed to carry anything except for their ID card and except for their visitor's pass. Now comes the third layer that is on the gate of the house. And on the gate of the house, another round of scanning is done to ensure even small things like a pen cap or a tissue, even that is not allowed. And in this particular case, when the intrusion happened, we saw that they actually hid the canister inside their socks, inside their shoes. And this is how they were able to penetrate or evade the security layers. So a laxity from the security side has also been done. Now, what are the security agencies which are involved for ensuring the security of Parliament? The epicenter of it is the Joint Secretary of Security. Now, Joint Secretary is the one who oversees all the operations of multiple agencies that are functional in ensuring the security of the Parliament. Now, these are your Parliamentary Security Services or Parliamentary Security Staff. Then there is Delhi Police, because Parliament is located in New Delhi. Then there is Parliamentary Duty Group. Then there is NSG, National Security Guard, and then there are other CRPF professionals also. So all of them are eventually regulated, coordinated and monitored and operated by the Joint Secretary for Security. Then as we know that all the security has been divided differentially in the terms of area. There is layer 1, layer 2 and layer 3. For each layer, there is a different security officer or assistant director for security appointed to take care of that particular layer. Now comes the nodal agency, nodal security organization responsible for ensuring the security and monitoring with the other personnels, other agencies as well. This is the Parliament Security Services. Kindly remember these services because this can be asked in the prelims examination. So Parliamentary Security Services are responsible for ensuring coordination among Delhi Police, Parliament Duty Group, CRPF, Delhi Fire Service, Intelligence Bureau, SPG and NSG. Parliamentary Security Services, because they have got such a huge expertise in coordinating and monitoring the movements of Parliament. They are also engaged in election ceremonies, especially during the election of President, the oath-taking ceremony or any other function that the Parliament performs, or even in the Republic Day. So they are involved there as well. Now, in order to manage across or to have a joint command for all these multiple agencies and across different layers of security, there is establishment of a joint command and control center. Now, when it comes to the security infrastructure, this is high-tech in nature. Security arsenal includes that, first of all, the very strict rule that arms and ammunitions of any kind whatsoever will not be allowed into the sanctum of Parliament. And second, there will be door frame metal detectors, there will be modern gadgets, there will be RF tags, there will be control vehicles which are controlled using RF tags. There will be tire killers and road blockers which are strategically placed in order to avoid any threat perception as well. And then there is also border security around the perimeter of the Parliament by installing security power fence. Now, despite all this security infrastructure, we know that it has been breached. So this here highlights the case that how we need to enhance the very security infrastructure of the temple of democracy. So we need to bolster our surveillance mechanisms. We need to ensure that proper vigilance, active vigilance is taken across the security agencies, and also regulations are put in place. Regulations and amendments in these rules and procedures are taken place in order to make more stringent measure so that we support and protect the very sanctum of democracy. Now coming to the next topic, this is about a WHO report, and this will be highlighting the cases or the trends of road accidents and associated fatalities across the world. What is the context that it has highlighted? That while there are rising fatalities of road accidents observed in India, but across the world we will see that the average is showing a declining trend, as in India it has risen to about 15%, the death or the fatalities associated with road accident, whereas across the world it has declined by 5%. So thereby we will be doing in-depth analysis of this particular report and the scenario of road accidents in India. Now first of all, what are the statistics highlight? The name of this report is the Global Status Report on the Road Accidents across the world. And what is the significance of this report? Because you might not be knowing that this particular decade, the 2021 to 2030 decade, is assigned as the United Nations Decade of Action for Reduction of Fatalities due to Road Accident or Death due to Road Accident. So in order to gauge the development or to assess the progress of various nations as to where they have performed, how they have performed in their compliance across for this particular decade, this status report has been created or has been published by WHO, World Health Organization. Now, it has shown that the world average has seen a 5% drop or decline in the amount of accidents that are taking place, also in the amount of death and fatalities that are taking place due to accident. But in the case of India, there is a 15% rise. In a generic trend, it can be seen that the more developed nations, for example, the Scandinavian nations of Norway, Sweden, Finland, there is Russia, there is Japan, there is Belgium, these nations are performing extremely well. They have also fulfilled the targets that are given by the United Nations Decade of Action. The target actually was to have a reduction of 50% in the amount of deaths due to the road accident, and this was actually one of the SDG goal as well, SDG goal 3.6. So, in order to ensure and fulfill this, countries made multiple measures, and the best among them were the developing countries, especially the ones that I have just told you. These countries, these 10 countries, have been successful in fulfilling this target, reducing the fatality to less than 50%. But for the other countries, especially the developing countries of the Southeast Asia, we have seen that there has been a rise, not a decline, but rather a rise in the amount of fatalities. Then it has also been seen then that the leading factor for killing the youth of our world and the children of our world, especially those ranging from 5 to 29 years of age, is the road traffic crashes. So just imagine the amount of resources we are actually letting go, we are wasting, we are not doing justice to, just because we are not managing the fatalities, just because we are not managing the accidents and the road infrastructure of the nations. So therefore, now let's understand about the Indian highlights that has been showcased by the WHO report. The first and foremost thing, as you can observe from this graph as well, which has been published by this report itself, that you can see a rising trend ever since COVID. Only in COVID a spike decline was there because the vehicles were not rolling out due to quarantines, but eventually it is again seeing a rising trend. So much so that the severity has increased. It was 28.2 lakh cases in 2012, and after 10 years it has risen to more than 50%, that is 36.5 lakh people. Not only that, in every 1 hour we are able to see 53 accidents and 19 deaths in the last 1 year. And also, we have seen that while India, a country which owns only 1% of the total global vehicles across the world, has actually ranked first in a World Bank report which assesses the total number of accidents that takes place. So in the total number of accidents, India is the first, and when it comes to total number of fatalities, we are also one of the leading, we are among the top 20. That is the amount of severity going on in India. When it comes to distribution in state, UP amounts for most number of accidents, most number of deaths, then Tamil Nadu, then Maharashtra. Then the cost on Indian economy of these fatalities is also huge. It costs us more than 3 to 5% of our annual GDP. So thereby, we need to analyze what causes road accidents in India, how can we reduce the fatalities, and what are the steps taken by the Indian government. First of all, let's analyze the causes. See, the most important cause is the infrastructural failure from the part of India. Very famously, we know that Indian roads are working in pathetic conditions. Also, there is improper designing of the road in the first place. So most of the lanes that India has are single lane. That is, two vehicles are passing in bidirectional manner through one lane only. The second thing is that we have got steep curves, also known as blind curves in many places. These are the accident hotspots. So the first issue is with the designing of the roads, and second with the maintenance of the road, because the quality of material that we are using for constructing the road is fairly bad. And secondly, we are also seeing a lot of improper maintenance, because of which the potholes that are created in the Indian roads are never fixed or fixed really very late. Therefore, it also leads to a lot of accidents across it. Fine. These were some of the infrastructural deficits. But what about us? Us who are the drivers, we are also risky, we are also negligent by the very nature. In the case of India, the high risk appetite of the youth can be seen. And it can be seen so much so that overspeeding is a single most important factor for having deaths or fatalities from road accident. Up to 70%, if you see this graph, you will be seeing that overspeeding contributes for more than 70% of the total deaths. And then there is dangerous or reckless driving, and then there are the other causes. So this risk-taking appetite, the negligence from our side, the use of intoxicants, and also negligence in the form of not complying to the road safety measures, road safety signs, or the different road safety mechanisms that you should be using. For example, not wearing the protective gears like helmets, seat belts, etc. So this also amounts for a huge amount of negligence, which eventually leads to increase of the fatalities. Increase or bearing on the life not only of the driver but also of the fellow passengers. Also, we have a tendency of overloading. So tripling is a common trend in India. And you can see that in order to save the transportation cost, we actually put a cost on the lives of the people, not only of ours but also of others. So overloading is also one of the reasons, negligence, overspeeding, intoxication, some of the reasons which we can avoid from our side as well. Next, we have got weak vehicle safety standards in India. So there is one standard test that is conducted across the world. This is the United Nations Frontal Impact Crash Test. Surprisingly, most of the top selling car models in the India are not compliant or have failed into this frontal impact crash test, and still they are rolling out, still they are working in Indian markets. So therefore, we have also got weak compliance of the internationally acclaimed safety standards. Then there is lack of awareness as well. We do not know what are the safety gears, safety measures available in a particular vehicle. So we are avoidant of airbags which are responsible for giving you a cushion against any damage, especially your brain. Then any anti-lock braking system. And anti-lock braking system is also deployed in most of the vehicles, but we don't even ask for it if we are not given it inbuilt into our vehicles. Then the golden hour rule, which many of us don't know. So the very next hour after the injury or the traumatic injury has taken place due to the road accident is very, very crucial for saving the life. And therefore, Indian government has also ensured that the cashless treatment for the person who's coming in the golden hour. This is known as the golden hour policy of the Indian government. So this is also in place, but because many of us don't know, we don't report, we don't take the person, fearing that FIRs would be followed, fearing that we have to pay the cash for this. And therefore, the very crucial movement to save lifespan of or life of somebody is actually forgone. Now, last one is issues with the Motor Vehicle Amendment Act 2019. This was a very good legislation, but it had one limitation. It imposed heavy fines, heavy penalties. Now, because Indians have not got that much purchasing capacity or fine paying capacity, so therefore, due to the limited fine capacity of the Indians, they eventually invaded the rules. They never followed it, and therefore it was not very effective. This rule was not effective in penalizing the people who were not following the safety standards on road. Now, what are the steps taken and what can we do about it? So once we have understood the multi-pronged causes of the road accidents and the associated fatalities in India, see, one thing you need to understand. It is not the road accident, but it is the injury to life. It is the fatality to the life that needs to be avoided over here. And therefore, the focus should be multi-pronged as well. Multi-pronged approach ensures that first of all, people, riders like you and me, the bystanders, the people who are using road, they are educated about their safety and they are educated about the responsibility to be assumed for the safety of fellow passengers as well. Then engineering of both the vehicles and the roads also need to take place. Then proper and stringent enforcement of the regulatory standards, like that we have seen, the United Nations standard for frontal impact, and also enforcement of Motor Vehicle Safety Act, etc. They also need to be ensured. And finally, in order to save life, you need to provide emergency care, and people should be made aware of it as well. Now, at the national level, we have got Motor Vehicle Amendment Act. There are certain features which ensures that the fatality will come down. And these are, first of all, to ensure that the vehicle is robust. So, an automated and mandatory vehicle fitness test has to be performed. Second, government has the right to recall any vehicle if any defect is found into it, so much so that it can cause damage not just to the driver, but also to the environment or to other fellow road users. Then there is establishment of National Road Safety Board, which actually has advisory function. It coordinates and it also manages the different aspects of road safety. We also need to enhance the awareness of the people, and for that, Indian government celebrates National Road Safety Month and Road Safety Week in order to enhance awareness of the people regarding the rising fatalities, regarding the rising accidents in India. Then a certification course is also being provided to whom? To the road safety auditor, so that we start creating people or start creating employment in the field of road safety auditing. Next, engineering. Engineering not just of the roads. We have to fix the black spots, the dark spots where most amount of accident takes place. For example, the blind curves, etc. We also have to identify them, rectify them, but at the same time, we also have to enhance the safety features of vehicles that are functioning in India. We also have to ensure the fitment of speed limiting device, because as we know that 70% or more fatality is happening due to overspeeding. What if we limit this amount of vehicle speed? And that can be done by putting speed limiting devices on the vehicles. Then one model inspection and certification center needs to be there in every state, and it actually has been ensured in every state or every UT of India. And the function of this inspection and certification center is to ensure that every vehicle that is functional on the road is compliant with the safety standard. Otherwise, it would be penalized or deregistered. And finally, we need to ensure that everybody knows about the golden hour policy of the government, and government needs to put up more awareness regarding it so that the fatalities that are coming from road accident can be reduced. Now, the international steps that are taken by India and across the world, first and foremost, is a conglomerated effort. This is coming from Brasilia Declaration. This is very important, can come in the form of match the column in prelims examination. So Brasilia Declaration is in line to fulfill the SDG goal 3.6, which is basically to reduce the number of global deaths by 2030, actually to halve them by 50%. Then this particular decade has been celebrated or chosen by United Nations to be considered as the decade for the action on road safety. And United Nations General Assembly has also adopted a resolution to improve the global road safety by again highlighting the same target, that is to prevent at least 50% of road traffic related deaths by 2030. And finally, a charity has been created in the form of International Road Assessment Program, the IRAP. This is very important because it not only assesses the standard or the safety parameters across different countries of the world, but also provides some financial support. So this is how we will be able to convert our road safe for the citizens. And then we come to the third topic. This is about the COP28 landmark deal which has been struck, ensuring that world's first global stock take has been adopted, which is ensured for the first time ever that we will be making effort along with the world to transition away from the fossil fuel. Now this is a single source for you to revise everything important that is going on in the COP28 development, because that is coming through the stock take. Now first of all, what is a stock take? See, stock take is basically taking the stocks of everything that you have done so far. This is a kind of SWOT analysis or the analysis of your strength, weaknesses, achievement and threat. But for what? So basically in 2015 when the Paris Agreement came, it came with one clause. It came with a common goal that we should try to limit the global warming or the rising global temperatures to less than well below 1.5 degrees centigrade. In order to do that, every country had to participate, not only the developed countries but also the developing ones. So they were given the nationally determined contributions. They themselves have to determine it and they have to ensure that they will be fulfilling it in order to ensure the fulfillment of this common global goal. Therefore, NDCs came. Now, how better are you performing? How far have you performed in achieving these NDCs? The SWOT analysis of the same by individual country has to be submitted in the COP or during the COP. This was first of all adopted in COP26. It was actually decided for the first time that we will be coming together and taking a stock of all the movements we have been doing for our NDC achievement. So this is the stock taking exercise which has been submitted. A draft has been created. The draft was created and submitted by United Nations in September. And since then, 5 iterations of this draft has been taking place ever since the COP28 is going on. And in the 5th iteration, that is on yesterday, finally it was adopted. The stock take says that there is a progress across the NDC's achievement of that. But this is not enough. Much more needs to be done because already 1.2 degrees centigrade has been reached. We are trying to limit to 1.5 till 2030. 1.2 near about that is already achieved. So this is again alarming. So what it wanted to do, it wanted to emphasize that we want to accelerate the amount of efforts. Now, the stock taking exercise or the global stock take highlights the following things in its argument or in its document. It identifies certain gaps. The previous legislations were nowhere talking about phasing out of fossil fuels which contribute to more than 70% of the total emissions, single-handedly responsible for the greenhouse gases or global warming. Then they have not talked about any warming that is coming from the cooling agents that are used in refrigerators and ACs, etc. So global warming effect of this was also not taken place except for the Montreal Protocol, which is limited for ozone protection. Then they were also not talking about protection and giving due compensation of the small island developing nations. These countries like Vanuatu. So these nations, these small island nations, because they are sinking accelerately, therefore it is important for us to provide them loss and damage compensation, and these were some of the factors that were not talked about in the previous COPs. So this one would be identified these gaps, and finally we will be examining the existing opportunities in the form of biotechnologies, for example gene editing to create the climate resilient crops, etc. And then also utilizing artificial intelligence in order to have early warning systems, in order to have more surveillance of the crops across the world, etc. There could be multiple things. So analyzing and using the emerging technologies, the emerging opportunities, and then accelerating the implementation by providing more financial impetus, more finance, giving up more funds, that, and also supporting all the areas related to climate change. All of that has been highlighted by the global stock take. Now, the most important thing that was done by global stocktake was its very strong language on the phasing out of fossil fuel. So before, the previous draft of this stocktake actually said that there are certain list of things that could be done in order to achieve the phasing out. But in the very next iteration, that which was accepted yesterday, in that they have mandatorily said the countries to phase out the fossil fuels by following these 8 iterations or these 8 measures. Now this document, the screenshot of this is very, very important. Now as you can see from multiple NDCs, for example India only, there was no NDC, no commitment regarding phasing out of fossil fuel. Yes, we were talking about lessening up the emissions, we were talking about having more sequestration, achieving net zero, achieving renewable energy, increasing fossil fuel energy, but we are not talking about decreasing the energy that is coming from the fossil fuel. So for the first time ever, this is coming from the global stocktake, that is of COP28. Now, the screenshot is very important because whatever 8 provisions have been enlisted in this global stocktake, this can be given by UPSC examiner as it is, just like the statement. So here please understand that they have said, first of all, we need to triple the renewable energy capacity globally. Second, we need to accelerate efforts towards phase down of the unabated coal power. We have already read about unabated coal power in the previous analysis, so you kindly refer to that. Then accelerating efforts globally towards net zero energy emission system. Then transitioning away from the fossil fuel in the energy system. This is very important statement. And to achieve net zero by 2050. This is the target that is given by this particular stocktake. Then accelerating zero and low emission technologies. Accelerating and substantially reducing the non-carbon dioxide emissions, especially the methane gas. We have already talked about the methane gas and the global methane pledge. Why? Because methane is very potent global warming gas, and this is responsible, it has global warming potential of up to 28 times to that what carbon dioxide has. So therefore the focus is here on methane emissions particularly, and also on the other emissions that are coming from the cooling sources, for example the hydrofluorocarbons, etc. Then the other two, phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies as well, and accelerating the reduction of emission from road transport and pathways. So kindly have a look from the handout that is available in the description box. Now, what are the pledges made so far in COP28 that have been summarized by the global stocktake document? Let's have a quick look into it. First and foremost, it talked about operationalizing, and actually in a very successful step, loss and damage fund have been operationalized officially through this COP. So loss and damage is where you have to recognize that the mitigation steps are not enough to abate the effect of climate change. Many kind of losses and damage on the lives, property, livelihood, economy of multiple countries have taken place already. So we now need to provide them compensation, and that should be the responsibility of developed nations which have the highest amount of carbon footprint. So therefore, loss and damage funds have been operationalized here. Second, there is a new agenda, or there is a new target of tripling the renewable energy capacity. So it was highlighted by the International Energy Agency that currently the capacity is of 3,400 gigawatt across the world, and if that is tripled to 11,000, then we will be able to avoid the emission of carbon dioxide to more than 7 billion equivalent per year. And this is signed by 116 countries. The very important fact for this is India is not a part of this pledge, tripling renewable energy capacity. Neither it is a part of tripling the world's nuclear energy capacity of 2050. The target here is 2050, signed by 22 countries. This will help us to avoid about 70 billion tons of the carbon dioxide emission equivalent into the atmosphere. Then a very important pledge for the fossil fuel. This is the Powering Past Coal Alliance. Kindly remember this. This can be asked in prelims examination as well. This is a kind of non-proliferation treaty for the fossil fuels, and it was initiated not in this COP, please remember this, but in 2017 COP. It was an initiative taken by United Kingdoms and Canada, who will be funding this, and many countries have signed this except for some developing countries like India. So India again is not a part of this. The idea is to phase out the fossil fuels, is also to not let the establishment of new fossil fuel or such thermal power plants which are using fossil fuels without any CCUS technology, that is carbon capture, utilization and storage technology. That is the idea of Powering Past Coal Alliance. Then there is also interrelation of health that is understood with the climate action. This is basically that the extreme weather events like heat waves, like air pollution, also leads to causation of other factors like zoonotic disease, spread in infectious disease, etc., which has led to about 9 million people dying every day. So there is an interrelated connection between climate change and health, and therefore they need to be balanced together as well. The most important one here is the cooling pledge, where coolants like hydrofluorocarbons, SF6, etc. have been understood to be causing warming as well, and we need to take a pledge regarding the same, which has not been done by any COP till now. This is thus world's first collective focus, and the idea is to at least decrease it by 68% compared to the 2022 levels. Now I have a question for you. If you have attended carefully and attentively the previous analyst, the question is, which is the first country ever in the world to adopt a national cooling plan for itself? Kindly write down your answers in the comment box. Okay, and finally, a UAE Climate Investment Private Fund has also been created by this country, which is the host country, and the name of this fund is Altera. Now this question can be asked by UPSC in the form that Altera recently found in news is associated with what? So this is a kind of climate investment fund that is created by UAE. So this is about this landmark deal, and we have summarized important developments. Now let's talk about New Delhi Declaration on Artificial Intelligence. Now what has happened that in New Delhi, a declaration has been made. Why? Because see, after successfully presiding the G20 summit, we are now set to preside over the GPAI, which is also pronounced as GPay, not to be confused with Google Pay. This is the GPay Alliance, the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, an alliance of about 28 countries along with European Union. And this is where India has been assuming the presidency in the year 2024. And therefore, as a precursor event in the year 2023, it has organized a summit. And in this summit, New Delhi Declaration was finalized, or it was adopted by all the member countries. Now, artificial intelligence, as you know, is a kind of intelligence, general intelligence that is showcased by the computers and the softwares. And this is actually leading the fourth industrial revolution. But in order to ensure that the resources that are created from the artificial intelligence, that is, resources like the multiple softwares we are creating out of it, then multiple applications we are creating across domains like providing social justice, providing disaster management, improving agriculture efficiency, improving the healthcare sector, etc. So all the applications are also one among the resources. Then all the type of data resources, especially the big data resources that will be collected to process or to harness the efficiency of, or to harness the applications of artificial intelligence. All of these are the resources. What we need to ensure is that they do not remain concentrated with the developed countries, which are forefront runners in the technology of artificial intelligence. Rather, it is also equitably distributed among the less developed countries, that is the developing countries, especially that of Southeast Asia, which are of global south part. So that is the idea over here, that we are providing equitable distribution of the AI-led resources, and this has been pledged in the New Delhi Declaration. Now let's talk about the Global Partnership on AI. Global Partnership on AI is a multilateral effect that is coming from multi-stakeholders, not only the companies but also the countries, and about 28 countries along with European Union have pledged together to bridge the gap between the theory of AI and the applications of the AI, and to support the cutting-edge research and applied activities of the AI related priorities, so that we can not only achieve the sustainable development goals from the resources of AI, but we also ensure equitable development of the world. This particular alliance, this partnership was launched in 2020. India is one among the founding members, a very important fact from prelims. As you can see, all the countries from here. See, China is not a part of it, Russia is not a part of it, and you can also see that the Middle East, except for Turkey, is also not a part of it. So here you will be able to perform elimination, and no country which is a neighboring country to India is a part of this alliance except for Japan. And Japan is not a neighboring country, but yes, one of the good friends of India. So the idea over here is, we have got 28 countries which are coming together to harness the potential of the AI, and then to equitably distribute the resources, not just among them but across the world. Now, we have already seen that India is a founding member. Where is the secretariat? Secretariat is here in Paris. And what is the structure? First of all, it has a council. It has a steering committee within the council. Then it has got 2 centers of expertise. One is in the Montreal, Canada. The second one is in the France, that is in Paris. These centers of expertise will facilitate the 4 working groups that are present, that will aid to have more investments in R&D, equitable distribution of what? Resources like data and other applications and products that are coming from AI. So this was a quick revision of the New Delhi Declaration on Artificial Intelligence. Now coming to the last topic, this is the fiscal responsibility and budgetary management. Essentially, there are 2 news in hand. The first news highlighted the improvement in fiscal position of the states, which was actually highlighted by an RBI study. But on the other hand, state like Kerala, a state, is seeking flexibility in the FRBM Act as it is going on through financial crisis. So these 2 dichotomies we'll be reading today. Before that, let's understand what are the factors that determine the fiscal position of a state, the fiscal standing of a state, whether a state is performing well or bad. See, the first thing is the fiscal discipline that is followed by the state. Fiscal discipline in the sense of ensuring fiscal deficit targets, revenue deficit target, and the amount of lending or borrowing that it is doing. This fiscal deficit is ensured by a legislation which is the FRBM Act of 2003 and its further amendments. The second aspect, so first aspect was fiscal discipline, and the second aspect is the fiscal support. Fiscal support, that is the second aspect. Now, fiscal support is ensured by delegating or by giving the resources, distributing the resources among multiple states. And this is done, this responsibility is given to the Finance Commission of India. So we will be reading these 2 in order to understand the financial position, fiscal position of any state. We will be also studying the PYQs associated with it, because this is the hot favorite topic of UPSC. Now, first of all, the fiscal discipline is ensured by 3 metrics: the fiscal deficit, the revenue deficit, and the debt to GDP ratio. Now, the fiscal deficit is the one which basically suggests that how much revenue or how much expenditure has been done, excess expenditure has been done, minus how much revenue has been generated by the state. Now, since there is constitutional obligation for all the states, for any state actually, for that matter a nation also, to reflect a budgetary deficit of 0. That is essentially the amount of revenue that you are creating, only that much amount of expenditure should be there. But in practical reality, this is not possible. So what happens? If you have a revenue of 10 rupees, you might be spending more than 10, might be 20 rupees. In order to showcase a budgetary deficit of 0, you need to cut down on it. You need to compensate the excess expenditure. How will you do? By borrowing this money, by borrowing this 10 rupee. Now, this borrowing is known as the fiscal deficit. This net borrowing is known as the fiscal deficit of a state. And in order to be compliant with the fiscal deficit, the FRBM has set the target that every year the annual reduction target of the fiscal deficit ever since 2003 should be 0.3. Of course, the states and the nation has failed to do so, but the final target is to always limit it below 3% of GDP. Then revenue deficit. Now fiscal deficit are of two types. One, that are the recurring expenses, for example the salaries, the pensions and the subsidies that government is rolling out. This is known as revenue deficit. And the second one is to create some capital assets. This is known as the capital deficit. The more problematic among them is the revenue deficit, because first of all it is incurring and it doesn't have long lasting effect, long-term effect or multiplier effect in the economy. Therefore, we also have to zero down the revenue deficit, zero down, or complete reduction or zero downing of the revenue deficit is the entire idea or the target that is given by the FRBM. And the annual reduction rate should be of 0.5%. When it comes to debt to GDP ratio, that is how much amount of borrowing should a state be doing as compared to its GDP, that is limited to 60% combined for both the center and the state. In this particular case, center can do borrowing up to 40% and state can do borrowing up to 20%. Now, what are the multiple features of FRBM Act? First of all, it sets a ceiling on the maximum borrowing limit as compared to the percentage of GDP. Because what limit you are putting for a small state like Assam shouldn't be the same as that of Uttar Pradesh. Therefore, GDP is a very important metric that needs to be divided so as to calculate the allowable ceiling. Then the escape clause in order to provide flexibility against deviation of this target. This was introduced by N.K. Singh committee, and this relaxed the fiscal deficit target that it can be relaxed up to 50 basis point or 0.5% in the case of calamity or any exigency or any emergency. Then it also calls for producing a medium-term fiscal policy statement by all the states. Medium term reflects for a 3-year policy statement that should be given by all the governments so as to reflect their idea, their strategies and the procedures in order to ensure that they are putting or compliant to the fiscal deficit, revenue deficit and debt to GDP targets, that is the FRBM targets. So this was about the FRBM Act. Now let's talk about the second dimension of maintaining fiscal position. This is getting support or giving support to the state. This is done by Finance Commission. This is a constitutional body constituted under Part 5th of the Constitution, Article 280. It is a 5-membered body and this is responsible for basically allowing the distribution or creating recommendations for distribution of the financial resources across the state. There is a vertical distribution, there is a horizontal distribution. What are the metrics that are set by Finance Commission? These are very important. The metrics is, see, the 15th Finance Commission, the last one, said that first metric would be the overall population of the state, second would be area, then forest and ecology, income distance between the richest and the poorest, the demographic performance, tax effort. Now you must remember that the demographic performance and tax effort, these two have been newly added clauses and this question was asked by UPSC in 2023 prelims examination. So, as you can see that in the 14th Finance Commission, some factors were not there, but in the 15th Finance Commission, we have got a total of 7 determinants. Now, let's try to solve this particular question asked by UPSC regarding FRBM. The first statement, FRBM Review Committee report has recommended a debt to GDP ratio of 60% for combined and 40% for central government, 20% for the state government. Now, you tell me whether this statement is correct or not. I have already told you. Next, the central government has domestic liability of 21% and the state has got 49%. This is illogically incorrect. Why? Because it is not possible for central government to have a lower liability as compared to state government, right? And mostly it is twice. The liability that central government has as that of state is generally at an average, it is twice that of state government. So this statement is incorrect. The third one, as per the constitution, it is mandatory for a state to take central government consent for raising any loan if the former owes any outstanding liability. See, carefully understand the statement. If in case central government or if in case state government owes any kind of liability to any person, then the state government will definitely be accountable to him, right? Therefore, in the case of central government also, if there is any pending liability, then the state government has to go to or has to ask for the consent of central government before purchasing more liability. So this was the answer of this question. Now, exercise for you is to solve the PYQ of 2023 and let me know that for the horizontal tax devolution that was designated given by 15th Finance Commission, which of the above criteria were used and which were not used. So this was all about today's discussion. Thank you so much and have a nice day.